Good morning.
Dzień dobry.
Dzień dobry. Oh, how wonderful accent.
Okay.
I tried.
Wonderful accent. Like Polish. Leon, you have to learn.
Yeah, I'm learning. Learning announcements. Year of Learning, sponsored by Julian Boris Kagan, commemorating Yurtzad Julia's father, Yusuf Ben Mato, and a week of learning, sponsored by Denise and Leonard Schreiber, in memory of Leonard's mother, Jeanette Schreiber, Shaina Yafa, Bat, Yehuda, Shamas Shahav, and Aliyah.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Shavuos is soon upon us, and I want to focus on one of the important minhagim, a widespread minhagim of Shavuos, and that is the spreading of flowers and greenery in shuls and at home on Shavuos. Although I'm not sure the plastic flowers that they put up here qualifies, but I recall very vividly, this is in the late 60s when I would daven at Breuer's occasionally. On Shavuos, it was like walking into a flower store. I mean, the entire women's balcony was replete with flowers intertwined on the balcony and on the choir stand, and all it was just, and the reach was wonderful. And many shuls do the same thing. They'll put potted plants next to the aron or things. But the minhag was to literally spread grass and flowers and bring trees into the shul. So when you walk into the shul, people would smell the aroma of the trees and the flowers, and it would somehow remind them of Har Sinai. How do we know that there were flowers and greenery on Har Sinai? How do we know that? It could be a cragged mountaintop without anything. And the Torah tells us that 3 days before, we're in the middle now of the Shlosha Shmei Agbola, you had to get ready for Mamad Har Sinai, and you're not allowed to, the animals were prohibited from approaching the mountain. Why? Because there was obviously greenery and plants and grass there for them to eat. So to remember the fact that the mountain was surrounded by greenery and flowers, so we are accepting Torah on Shavuos, it's a reacceptance. So we go through the motions to make it as much like Shavuos at Har Sinai as possible. Now we'll talk about some of the issues in terms of how exactly they used to do that and the nature of the minhag. And one of the things that comes up, if the minhag is a completely Jewish minhag, then we have no issues with it. But what if a practice that Jews did or do was also done and is still being done by the churches, by the non-Jewish, by the Christian churches? They have plants and flowers in the church all the time. So are we, in fact, imitating the non-Jews by doing the same thing on Shavuos? They do it every Sunday. And we'll talk about that as well. Even though it's originally a Jewish custom. We had it first, as Rabbi Yudin always says, no question about it. But once it's been co-opted by the churches, is there an issue of imitating Goyim if we still do it? Because not everybody might be aware that it was ours first. We'll get to that a little bit later on. Now, yeah.
So when Jesus was killed, there was the Last Supper.
That was a Seder.
Right. So if they start doing a Last Supper, are we going to stop doing Pesach?
No, of course not. Well, we had it first, and we were having Sedarim. And by the way, that Last Supper is not incorporated into Christian practice. They don't have a Seder. They don't have a festive meal, so to speak, to commemorate the crucifixion.
No, but I'm saying if they did.
If they did, then the question, as we'll see, the Vilna Gaon raises this question. If something that we started was then picked up by the Goyim, is it something that we should stop doing because they're now doing it? We'll come to that in a moment. Yeah.
But isn't it, if they have a beautiful sword, we can use that sword to Rosh Hashanah.
No, definitely not.
It's not true.
No. I don't know if it's true, but we do not use church tunes in the shul. We shouldn't, put it that way. I mean, and this goes into a whole other topic I don't want to get into right now about sometimes people using modern show tunes or Israeli tunes for part of davening. And I mean, there's one very, very prominent chazan, and it drives me crazy whenever he davens for the Yomud, and he sings "Alone Along" to a Beatles tune. It drives me up a wall. It just, anyhow. Again, adopting tunes, Israeli tunes, Erev Shoshanim is very often used in Kedusha, but Erev Shoshanim is a secular Israeli love song. So, people have to know what they're doing, which is a separate shiur by itself. All right, moving on. What is the earliest source for this minhag of greenery in a shul? In all probability, it's medieval, but there is a fascinating targum. It's a targum sheni. There are different targumim that you have if you use mikros gedolos. You have targum onkelos, which everybody knows, Uncle Lewis, right? Everybody knows targum onkelos. And you have targum Yerushalmi, which is also included in many editions of the mikros gedolos. Then you also have a targum sheni, which is a later targum, the time of the Gaonim. So the figure, let's say 6th, 7th century approximately. In the Targum on to Megillas Esther, the Targum Sheni Megillas Esther talks about Haman complaining to Achashverosh about all the different Jewish celebrations. And he talks about Shavuos. And the Targum on Shavuos says that people would celebrate the holiday and they would go up on the roof of the shul and throw apples. Now, tapuchim means apples, although in Talmudic language and Midrashic language, tapuchim could also mean esrogim, separate discussion. But they were throwing fruits off the roof of the shul on Shavuos. I didn't make it up. Look it up. It's the Targum Yerushalmi. Or is it? Targum Sheni, right? Targum Sheni on Megillas Esther, Perek Gimel Pasuk Ches. Fascinating. They go up on the roof and throw Zorkim Tapuchim in Hebrew. In Chazure Umalaktin Yas, they would, in Aramaic, it's a little difficult, but they would go down and they would gather them afterwards. And they would say, just like we're gathering these Tapuchim, so Hashem should gather all of our fellow Jews that are in captivity, bring them all to Yerushalayim, etc. All right. But that's the earliest reference of anything that has to do with fruits or vegetation on Shavuos. Other than that Targum, there's no mention of this minhag in the Talmud. And the earliest we have is, I would say, 13th, 14th century in Ashkenaz. You don't find this in the Sephardic community that much, but it started in mostly the Ashkenazi community. The Maharil talks that you would bring spices from plants and roses, and the language that they use in all these people that talk about greenery is spreading them out, because they would throw them on the floor so you could smell it as you walk into shul, apparently. The Maharil mentions it, spices and roses, rose petals. The Leket Yosher, a little bit later, also talks about plants and spices at home on the first day of Yontif. And the Ramah, who codifies Ashkenazic practice for us in the Shulchan Aruch in the 16th century, says that they would spread plants at home and in the shul to remember the Simcha of Matan Torah. And I remember growing up as a child very clearly. Every year at Erev Shavuos, my father would come home with huge, I don't know what they call them, but these huge plants, flowers that open up. Every year at Shavuos, the same thing. You bring him home every year, Shavuos, and we have it smell up the whole house. I mean, a pleasant aroma. Shouldn't say smell, an aroma. And again, the minhag is not just in shul, but also at home. To remind you of the pleasant aroma that was the greenery on Har Sinai when there was Matan Torah. The Gemara mentions, interestingly, the only reference I could find, it's Gemara in Shabbos, that says when Hashem gave us the Aseres HaDibros, the world was filled with a pleasant aroma, fragrance. Is that the makor for it? I don't know. The Gaonim don't talk about it. The Gemara doesn't talk about it. It just mentions that the world was infused with a pleasant aroma the day the Torah was given. There's one Perush, the Alshich, says that the incident, if you remember the incident with Ruvain and the Dudaim, we try to do that, mandrakes, whatever incident happened with Ruvain and the Dudaim, that took place on Erev Shavuos. And Yisachar was conceived that evening. So in the schus of Torah, that Yisachar was born. All right, that's the Alshich. According to other Mefarshim, the Dudaim were spices. All right. The point is that the pleasant aroma. The Magen Avraham is a fascinating Magen Avraham. And this shows, I'm always amazed by this, that the Gedolim, the Balei Halacha, were very, very punctilious, very careful about observing Halacha in every possible way. Granted, we spread asovim, plants, and aromatic flowers in the shul on Shavuos. But when do you do it? So he writes, the Magen Avraham, he quotes the Shalom, and he says that you don't spread these flowers and plants in the shul, lahariach beveis hakneses, to smell them, ad achar tfilas yudches, until after Shmona Esrei. You wait until after Shmona Esrei before you, in shul. When you do this, why? Kedei sheyuchlu levorech al hareach. Because when you smell something pleasant, you make a bracha. Bore isvei besamim, different brachas, depending on what you're smelling. And it's also lahafsik mibarak she'amar ad achrei Shmona Esrei. But once you start barak she'amar, until you finish Shmona Esrei, you're not allowed to interrupt it in any way. So how do you make a bracha? You smell something.
Okay, you can make the bracha before you're done.
I'm just quoting the Magen Avraham. That's all I'm saying. Maybe people didn't come to shul that early.
They don't.
Okay, so people come to shul, whatever. But again, it's a sensitivity to the halacha. And I want to point it out that the Magen Avraham brings out that you stop davening after Shmona Esrei, you bring in your plants and your rose bushes or whatever else, and then you make a bracha, and then you continue with the davening. Because before then, you can't interrupt. You had a question, Nathan?
Yes. Why wouldn't you make up the bracha for smelling something aromatic when you first walk into the shul?
Well, that's Milty's. What Milty was saying, but people probably didn't come that early. Whatever. Again, I don't want to. The point. I just want to point out his sensitivity to halachic norms. That's the one. Granted, you walk into shul and it smells nice. Before you start davening, you can make a bracha. Fine. But maybe people didn't come to shul on time, or maybe they came late and they were trying to catch up. I'm just pointing out the fact that he was very sensitive to the halacha of when you can talk during davening. Yeah.
Aren't the flowers muktzah?
Okay, very good point. So the flowers are muktzah primarily if before I should point that out, if the first day of Shavuos comes out on Shabbos, that's more of a problem. On Yom Tov, it isn't as much of a problem. On Shabbos, some of the Mefarshim raised that problem, and that means you have to set up the shul before Shabbos with all the flowers and plants, except according to the Magen Avraham, and he may have a problem. So I don't know exactly how they worked this out. In all probability, they did set it up before Shabbos and before Yom Tov, and people came into shul. If they came on time, they make a bracha when they walked in. But what he's telling you is come early to shul, come on time, make your bracha and the pleasant aroma, and don't interrupt your davening to say, that smells nice.
So on a regular Shabbos,
Yeah.
people have them in putting flowers on the table. And some people don't like the fact that it blocks people's views. I've seen a lot of people pick up the vase and move it.
Yeah.
Is that really awesome?
It's questionable. It's questionable. If there's water in there, I mean, I know that some people, you come into the Shabbos table, okay, everybody's seen the flowers, we'll take them off now. That type of thing. Yeah, you raise a good question.
But the flowers enhance the Shabbos table.
Yes, okay, but you can smell the flowers on a side table, not as
Right,
much.
exactly. So moving it
is a questionable thing. I mean, the flowers are in the water. Is it helping them grow on Shabbos? It's a question of books. Okay. Okay, so the Chassam Sofer, going back to our Targum Sheni, the tapuach, whether it's an apple or an esrog, he also talks about it. If it's the fruit remains on the tree all year long, it's a whole discussion of what comes first, the leaves or the fruit. That's a separate discussion. But clearly, the flowers represent a relationship with the Kadosh Baruch. That the Torah is pleasant. Torah is something that we enjoy. And the Bnei Yissaschar, the very famous Tzvi Elimelech of Dinov, quotes this medrash also about the esrog or the apple compared to Bnei Yisrael, and that's why we celebrate the giving of the Torah with fruits or from the trees and so forth. It's also interesting, and again, why the Gemara doesn't mention this as a minhag, I'm not quite sure, but there's another fascinating Mishnah, very famous Mishnah in Rosh Hashanah. There are 4 times during the year where the world is judged. Pesach on the grain. On Shavuos, the world is judged on Peiros Ha'ilon. Okay? Then it goes on to other things. But so if Shavuos is the day that fruits are judged, so to speak, that's also a connection to Matan Torah and why we have it in the shul, according to some of the Meforshim. Day of Judgment, and therefore the Magen Avram, major commentary in the Shulchan Aruch, said that's why you put trees and flowers in the shuls. And again, they actually had potted plants that they moved into the shul. It wasn't just taking on either side of the Aron Kodesh having a stand with flowers in, that many shuls do. They would actually bring in small trees, potted trees in the shuls for Shavuos. Other similarities, interesting why we celebrate this, it's just how people put it all together. Moshe Rabbeinu came out of hiding and he went into that little teva that Miriam put him in the river on Shavuos. And you figure it out, he was born on Zayin Adar, okay? And he was hidden, the Torah tells us, for 3 months. That means he was put on the water on the 6th or 7th of Sivan. So therefore, we decorate our shul to commemorate that event with leaves, because the little teva was made out of bulrushes. So we also use vegetation. That's another connection. Now, along comes the Vilna Gaon. By that time, the Vilna Gaon is the 18th, the end of the 18th century. He's a contemporary of George Washington, to throw in our celebration of 250 years. The Vilna Gaon and George Washington were contemporaries. And he says that it's a minhag. It's a minhag, no question about it. It's a Jewish minhag, but it's been co-opted by the church. And therefore, the Vilna Gaon says it's proper. He doesn't say prohibited. It's proper to get rid of this minhag. So this brings us a whole other discussion, which we can have a separate shiur on altogether, in terms of which non-Jewish minhagim are we allowed to adopt and which are we not allowed to adopt. And this question discussed by the Achronim in great detail in terms of clothing, in terms of haircuts. You know, if the goyim behave a certain way, are we allowed to imitate those ways if necessary? Not just to do it stam, but if you need it for a job, if you have to wear a certain type of a uniform, is that considered chukas hagoy or not? So forth and so on. Wearing a yarmulke at work, all these types of things is raised by this type of attitude, that even though it's ours originally, we had it first, but once it's been co-opted, is it appropriate for us to do it? Because people may not know the history of it, and they'll say, oh, the churches do it, so you got to do it too. Yeah.
According to the building on, right? The Pope comes out tomorrow and he says, all Christians must keep their hair cut like with a yarmulke. And that happens, so it means we can't wear a yarmulke anymore, according to the building on. We have to wear hats, so you shouldn't wear yarmulkes anymore, because they're walking around.
It's a great question.
And the Pope wears a yarmulke.
The Pope, the archbishops, bishops, they all wear yarmulke. Yeah.
You should wear it.
All right, so, okay. It's an interesting theoretical question. I don't think the Pope is going to come out with that type of encyclical or legal ruling, but there are those who might agree with you.
You also see when you get married, try to stay away from what the goyim do in terms of by the football. You know, they stand a certain way, they stand a different way.
This is also why many rabbanim will not perform a wedding in a shul.
Right, shul also.
I asked Rav Lifshitz, who was my Masada Kedushin, and he told me, where's it going to be? And I said, in the shul in Englewood, Rabbi Swift's shul in Englewood. And he said, I'm sorry, I can't be Masada Kedushin in a shul. And I went through a whole litany. I wrote a whole paper giving all the Mari Makomos to tell him why that original Chaim, the Chassam Sofer, the Maram Shik, doesn't apply anymore. And he still stood his ground. And I kept on pressing him halachically. And finally, he left to run against Rav Goren to become chief rabbi of Tel Aviv at that time. So he wasn't in the States, so that was his excuse. But many rabbanim will not be. We had a situation here in Fairlawn many years ago. Rabbi Yudin was honored, I forget by which organization, and they had a breakfast at the Fairlawn Jewish Center. And there was a rabbi in the community who said, I would love to come and honor Rabbi Yudin, but it's being held in a conservative shul and I can't go. Aside from being a chutzpahdik thing to do in the first place, but again, this attitude is still out there.
But what's the Isur? It wasn't for davening. They were honoring Rabbi Yudin or somebody's other. You were getting married. You weren't.
I am just telling. I'm just there again. There are rabbanim who will not be Masada Kedushin in the shul today. Still,
but why?
Because the original chayrim, that was because the reform started imitating the church by having weddings in shul. Before the beginning of the reform movement, most weddings were held outdoors in the courtyard of the shul. All right. Then the reform started having it in the synagogue like the church did. So because they were imitating the goyim, we don't do that. So and there was a chayrim put out by the Chassam Sofer and later by the Maram Shik, his Talmud, and many rabbanim held by it. The fact that it may no longer exist doesn't bother them. They still don't do it. And the same way, Rav Moshe put out a tshuva once about going into a conservative and reform synagogue altogether. And I remember a number of times this happened where people got married in a non-Orthodox synagogue and they went to daven mincha. But they wouldn't daven mincha in the shul part of the shul. They would daven in the hallway. Yesh v'yesh. Okay. And again, the Vilna Gaon was opposed to flowers on Shavuos because of this. The Chai Adam expands on this, and he says, even if we have a valid practice, and it might be subsequently adopted by non-Jews, it could become chukas akum. It could become a prohibited non-Jewish practice, and that's why we shouldn't put trees in the shul on Shabbos. That's the Chayei Adam. And the Aruch HaShulchan quotes it. This opens up a whole other topic for a discussion about minhagim, or practices that the non-Jews adopted, whether or not we can adopt those things or not, depending on what's considered darkei amori or not. What's considered essentially a non-Jewish practice? Is it based on avodah zarah, or it's simply something that's nonsense? And nonsense is permissible, according to most poskim. Again, you have some Jews who won't wear a necktie. It's a goyish practice. Hasidim, certain groups of Hasidim, only wear clothing that buttons right over left. Look at all your shirts, men. How do they button? Left over right. Okay?
Women have right over.
Women have right over left, yes. But no. The reason that women have it that way is because wealthy women used to have people dress them. And for the dressers, it was more convenient to have it to button their blouses and what have you. So you don't harm as a dresser then. But in any event, that's some of the historical reason. But in any event, that's a whole separate topic of what's considered chukas. If it's not based on avodah zarah, if it's based on nonsensical issues, then it's not a problem. Again, darkei amori is a separate theme. As far as the trees and plants on Shavuos, most people would agree that this is something that we could do, we should do, and most Jews, Hasidim and Nestagdim, do this. The chukas achim thing never really caught on. Certainly not in Eretz Yisrael, because there aren't too many, initially there weren't too many non-Jews there that had trees in their churches and so forth. But clearly this is a very ancient minhag that most Jews today observe, Hasidim and Misnag. Yeah.
Why is the tip of it right over left?
Because they're manufactured by Hasidim most of the time. That's all I can tell you. I mean, that's the only answer I can think of.
Good point.
All right, good question. Anything else? Okay, have a wonderful Yontif. And again, if anybody wants to learn Megillas Rus first night of Shavuos, please let me know. Be happy to do it with you. Have a great day.
Tak, Shavuos Sameach.
Michael.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Have a good day and a good Yontif.
Good Yontif, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Michael.
Yishem Baruch Etov Yadalam.
You don't have a video.
Baruch Shalom Shalom. Amen. Amen. Amen.
Remember we used to have our dinners in the Phelan Jewish Center. The rabbi would never let us go inside to the sanctuary. We used to daven outside mincha by the bathrooms.
Well, down in the hallway, the corridor.
No, it was right near the bathrooms.
Yeah, many times, different shuls, people get married. I remember my daughter got married. It was the only room big enough, she had a huge wedding. The Machatonim were very involved in the community. So we had it in a big Reform synagogue in Lawrence. We davened mincha in the chassidus room, the side room.